If you've ever flown on a regional airline like United Express or American Eagle, you may have seen a sticker like this near the front of the aircraft saying operated by and then some other airline name. I noticed this earlier this year when I flew with United Express to Key West on one of their Embraer E170s. As is the case with many regional flights in the US, this one was operated by a dedicated regional airline on behalf of United Express. So when I got back, I foraged through the interwebs to find out why. So basically, here's how regional airlines work. So for most of this video, we're going to be talking about regional flights in the United States, since the US is arguably the most robust regional network in the world, but we'll get back to regional carriers elsewhere later on. So the US has such an expansive regional route network, primarily because the country itself is so large, along with its major airlines. If you look at a population density map of the US, there are huge areas of sparsely populated land far from major population centers. Since public transportation in the US is not nearly as far-reaching as it is in Europe and other parts of the world, the best way to get to these places is often to fly. This means that due to the sheer number of regional airports in the US, there's a huge demand for regional flights. The big three carriers, Delta, United, and American, are already super large and complex, and having their own regional flights adds an extra layer of complexity. To simplify this, they let dedicated regional airlines handle all of their regional operations on their behalf. Many employees of regional airlines, especially pilots and cabin crew, are at the very beginning of their careers and have less experience than those at major airlines. Flying regional flights is a great way for young pilots to gain experience and often leads to a much more lucrative job at a major airline later on. Since their crews have less experience, this does unfortunately mean that regional airlines pay their flight crews much less than other airlines. This also means that an airline can pay their own flight crews flying their mainline routes differently than those working for contracted airlines. So regional pilots who make less money technically work for a different company and therefore can be paid by a separate corporate entity. Also, most regional airlines use aircraft like the Bombardier CRJ family or the Embraer E-Jets, and not the usual Boeing and Airbus aircraft that major airlines have in their fleets. Instead of having to train flight crews and maintenance personnel to that specific aircraft type, as well as having enough of their own spare parts for those aircraft, they can let a separate airline take care of that, since those airlines typically fly only one type of aircraft. For example, my flight to Key West was operated by Republic Airways, meaning that the flight crew are employees of Republic Airways and the airplane itself is owned by them, despite having United Express emblazoned on the side. This is only meant to represent the airline it's currently operating flights for, but occasionally you can see aircraft painted in the liveries of the actual owner. When my flight communicated with air traffic control, they used the call sign for Republic Airways since they are the ones operating the flight and not the call sign for United.
Brickyard 3650, wind 220 at 10, runway 23 right at Whiskey, cleared for takeoff.
23 right, Whiskey, cleared to go, Brickyard 3650.
The airlines that operate for the three US flag carriers are actually pretty well organized. They typically fly only one aircraft type and only for one mainline carrier. Oftentimes these airlines are also entirely owned by the airline they operate for. Endeavor Air is entirely owned by Delta, Envoy, Piedmont, and PSA Airlines are owned by American, and Horizon Air is owned by Alaska. These airlines are therefore incredibly vulnerable to rapid changes in the industry. For example, Compass Airlines used to operate flights for Northwest Airlink and later Delta Connection and American Eagle. When the COVID pandemic started in early 2020, both these airlines needed to streamline their operations in order to save money, and this included terminating contracts with regional carriers. Both Delta and American terminated their contracts with Compass Airlines, and the airline then had no other airlines to fly for and no flights of its own, which caused it to shut down just weeks after the pandemic began. These airlines also typically serve only one region from certain airline hubs. Republic Airways primarily operates flights along the East Coast from all the major hubs, and SkyWest primarily serves the western half of the US. Envoy operates flights for American Eagle out of their hubs in Miami, Chicago, Dallas, and Phoenix. GoJet Airlines flies for United Express from Newark, Chicago, and Washington, and Endeavor Air flies for Delta Connection from Atlanta, Cincinnati, Detroit, Minneapolis, LaGuardia, and JFK. Though I just listed a few, there are around 10 airlines in total operating for Delta, United, American, and Alaska Airlines, plus numerous more independent regional carriers. Regional airlines play an important role in connecting small and often remote communities with the outside world. For many of these communities, their airports may have only a few flights per week to a major hub, but that link is still vital to those who live there. That's why the US government subsidizes airlines who fly to these communities through a program called the Essential Air Service so they can keep these routes open, routes that would often make them lose money without government assistance. This means that tiny communities such as Alliance, Nebraska, Presque Isle, Maine, Aberdeen, South Dakota, Waimea, Hawaii, and Teneke Springs, Alaska are still connected to the outside world by air despite their remote location. Now we're going to have a quick look at regional airlines around the world. There are a few airlines outside of the US that also outsource their regional flights to other carriers, like Air Canada Express, SAS, and QantasLink. However, the vast majority of regional subsidiaries operate their own flights without the use of outside companies. Airlines like KLM Cityhopper, Lufthansa CityLine, BA Cityflyer, and Air France Hop are all independent subsidiaries of the main airline and still operate their own flights. So that's basically how regional airlines work. They are a vital and sometimes overlooked part of the aviation industry, but they do valuable work connecting the smallest towns with the largest cities. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know what aviation topics I should cover in future videos, and feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe for more aviation content on this channel. Take care, and thanks so much for watching.